Unlock this exclusive 20% discount on all Earthlight products, from portable tables and chairs to professional sheets and oils. Visit earthlight.com, create an account, and enter your ABMP member ID during registration. Plus, enjoy free ground shipping on orders over $75 and a flat rate of $395 for stationary or electric lift tables. Significant savings on everything you need to enhance your practice. Shipping rates and discounts subject to change. We're proud to assist you as the world's #1 brand in massage. Visit earthlight.com. Precision Neuromuscular Therapy has been teaching high-quality seminars across the country for over 20 years. Founded by Doug Nelson, PNMT uses problem-solving skills and precise treatment options to get powerful results for your clients. PNMT seminars focus on honing your assessment and palpation skills to precisely target the source of your client's pain while understanding the why behind the what. Meet us in a hands-on seminar or online in the PNMT portal and let us join you on your learning journey. Learn more at pnmt.org.
I want to talk about my relationship with exercise because I've quite literally been through every emotion with it. I've loved it, hated it, respected it, and been disgusted by it. For anyone who follows me on social media, you might have some picture in your head that I love it. And currently, I do. But it has been a long journey, my friends. For the first half of my life, and I'm older now, so that means a good chunk of time, I quite literally did everything I could to avoid it. I mean, I was signed up for every sport, so I played them, but my poor dad fought me more often than not to get me out there, and then once I was out there, I was for sure not digging deep or trying hard. I was convinced for years that no one really actually liked exercising. Sure, people did it, but as far as I was concerned, they were just running from something or trying to prove something. I was above that and somehow deeply wise in my thoughts. And then one day, I actually started liking to work out, which I honestly never thought I would say. But I'm saying it now, and I'm not saying it to boast about how evolved I am, but more because I think I just Pavlovian responsed myself. Basically, I knew enough about the benefits of exercise, it only just seemed like I wasn't listening. And of course, when I started learning about anatomy and physiology, I was like, okay, I guess there might be something to this. And so when I found myself stuck in a messy depression about 20 years ago, I tried using exercise to help. I chose running because I could do it by myself and it took the least amount of time. But every time I ran, I gave myself a treat. If I didn't run, I didn't get the treat. And I did this often enough and for a long enough time frame that eventually, I'm pretty sure I tricked my brain into having a positive response to this thing that was emphatically labeled bad by every cell in my body. My point is this. Even if you know this already, we can absolutely train our muscles and our brains to act differently. I'm not saying this is easy, but this has got to be at the forefront of your conscious mind when you do body work. And this is especially true when you're approaching a particularly vulnerable area like the bottom of the foot or the adductors at the inner thigh or a very specific muscle that is buried in a very protected region of the body like the subscapularis. Massage therapists love the subscapularis. Understandably, we learn early on that there are a handful of muscles that just innately seem to be crazy tense, and that no one is really aware of, and that once we access it, we can perform miracles. We also learn, though, that these muscles tend to already have a story that they live by, that they are either too sensitive or too ticklish or tender to the touch or all of the above, and that is that. The subscapularis is a prime example of this. Consider its orientation. The subscap, as we like to call it in the field, is buried deep in the armpit, or the axillary region, as we like to call it in the field. And it is, as its name infers, under the scapula, which means it's buried, not only under other muscles and tissues, but also mostly under a bone. It lives on the anterior facet of the scapula, or the side that faces the ribs. The scapula itself situated at the upper back, is not entirely attached by thick fibrocartilage or a joint capsule, as you will find in most other joints. Well, let me put it this way. The most lateral point of the scapula, called the glenoid fossa, is indeed half of the glenohumeral joint, the joint in the shoulder most people think of when they think of the shoulder joint. And there is a joint capsule there with all of its cartilage and synovial fluid and ligaments, etc. But the main portion of the scapula is anchored onto the ribs via a very cool interweaving of musculature. This articulation of bones, as it were, is also a joint. It's one of the 4 joints that make up the shoulder girdle, and it's called the scapulothoracic joint. The concave arc of the scapula conforms to the convex arc of the rib cage, and all of those interweaving muscles attaching all along the aspects of the scapula to other various nearby bones allow the scapula to slide in pretty much every direction, kind of like a ball and socket joint, but flatter. And this is where the subscapularis comes in. The subscap lays flat on the subscapular fossa, which is the name for that anterior surface of the scapula. Its fibers extend horizontally from the medial border across the fossa and then narrow to a tendon reaching across the inferior aspect of the glenohumeral joint or under the armpit. From here, it grabs onto the lesser tubercle of the humerus or the little bump at the front of the top of your upper arm bone. This means that when the subscap contracts, it pulls the humerus into internal rotation. So it'll pull the lesser tubercle toward the chest, or more clearly, if your elbow is bent, your hand would move towards your belly. And according to some sources, it helps to pull the arm into adduction. So if your arm is raised away from the body, it helps to pull your arm back down to your side. It also plays an important role in stabilization of the shoulder. Being the most mobile joint in the body, the shoulder requires a lot of help in the stabilization department. This also means that the subscap is strong. So we generally have a lot more strength in internal rotation as opposed to external rotation and in adduction as opposed to abduction. This also means it's chronically contracted, so stabilizing muscles tend to get stuck in this rut. And it also means that this muscle is difficult to stretch. All of this leads to a habitually shortened position that limits communication to the muscles surrounding it and to the brain. If we dig deeper into what this really means, though, this beautiful, strong muscle lives in a dark corner of the posterior torso and believes that it is supposed to be short, accepts that it is inaccessible, and understands that its lot in life is to stay tense and remain untouched. This is a quandary when we've got a client who is suffering from chronic shoulder pain or limitations in range of motion or irritation with specific movements, which, as the older we get, is more and more common. But if we want to be effective with our work as soft tissue practitioners, we have got to be thorough with our approach. And it is incredibly difficult to be thorough when the client is convinced that working on a muscle, like the subscapularis, is not happening. So, how do we change that narrative? I mean, this is an excellent question for all the parts of our lives that seem to be stuck in unhealthy patterns, but for the work that we do, for our clients who are convinced that they are ticklish or too sensitive or stuck in pain, how do we help their tissues begin to reboot their status? We upregulate their system. Bear with me for this one. Upregulating in the dictionary is defined as the process of increasing the response to a stimulus. Specifically, it is referring to an increase in a cellular response due to an increase in the number of receptors on the cell surface. But I always like to think about these kinds of definitions as merely being symbolic of what is happening on a grander scale in all the dimensions of being human. So, to upregulate a muscle like the subscapularis that is stuck in its sensory input and motor output capacity, we slowly work with it to increase its capability of what it can receive and what it can do. There is some science here. The cells in this case are, of course, muscle cells. And 2 of the most studied receptors in muscle cells are muscle spindles and the Golgi tendon organs. These, as you may or may not be familiar, are the highly specialized sensory receptors that signal length, changes in length, and how much tension a muscle is exerting. There is more to it than that, as there always is, but if we think about what it might mean to upregulate the specialized muscle cells in the subscapularis, then what we are talking about is really a Pavlovian response. I hated exercise. I was convinced that it hurt and made me grumpy. Convinced. But by treating myself every time I begrudgingly put my sneakers on and ran out the door, I, in a manner of speaking, upregulated my attitude. Full transparency, I did not start enjoying running overnight. But after years of setting my receptors to receive what I was doing as a good thing, my brain and my body eventually was like, all right then, I'm in. Clearly, we can't take that exact approach with bodywork, but one of the best ways to begin to upregulate the subscapularis for your client is to incorporate breath with your work. This is something I'm betting most of you do anyway, but let's look at it differently. Breath brings attention inward. An automated response, like feeling ticklish or nervous, is commonly a response that is not conscious. Becoming conscious, then, is the first step. When we hold a muscle with whatever degree of pressure that is appropriate for that client, and we ask them to breathe, we are asking them to switch from gathering information from the outside world to feeling, assessing, and understanding information from their inside world, the world beneath their own skin. And when they begin to sit with something they were previously unaware of, they can start to see how that thing works, recognize their own hesitation as a limitation, and then create a new relationship with it. I have found that when working with the client's subscapularis, positioning them on their side is best because it tends to be a position of comfort. Most people fall asleep this way. And they can see me, so they don't feel guarded around not knowing what's happening next. This isn't always the case. Everyone is different. But this has been true for me more times than not. Approaching the actual anterior aspect of the scapula can happen from a number of different directions, and I have a handful of videos on this topic on my YouTube channel. Please go watch them. They are all free. But the big thing to keep in mind, if you are really trying to change the narrative for your client, and they are ready for this to happen, is that whatever technique you utilize, make sure you incorporate breath. Find the comfortable position, stay present with your work, remain soft with your approach, and once you are on the edge of that automated response of tension or ticklishness or just shutting down, ask your client to trust the moment. Take a deep breath, exhale, and then notice what happens. It may take a handful of attempts, but change is never easy. Remembering the parts of me that felt 180 degrees in a different direction than I am now is not necessarily a right or a wrong thing. It's a different thing, and a thing that has helped me act differently. A subscapularis may have a fear response to hands-on work, and that client may be convinced that they are right in feeling that way, and that their subscapularis should, in fact, never be worked on. And that's okay. But it's our job as therapists and teachers to teach soft tissue a positive experience and repeat that experience until the owner of said soft tissue is ready to make change for themselves.
Anatomy Trains invites you to take your career to the next level with Anatomy Trains Structural Integration, ATSI. We're kicking off the next training this September in Maine under the guidance of Tom Myers and our expert team. Come map the pattern and shape the change in this transformational 3-part certification program. Visit anatomytrains.com for details.